So living in Utah is a very interesting place to be as a creative almoster. What are those Mormons putting in the water? Welcome to I Will Thrive, episode 5. A Miracle Baby. I was born in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and I'm an only child. I wasn't supposed to be born, as the doctors had told my mom that she was sterile after her previous 5 years of chemotherapy, radiation, and multiple other nasty procedures. That poor gal has been sick her entire adult life, starting at age 18. But the universe wanted me here so I could fail a whole bunch and tell you about it. And that's why to this day, whether we're at the grocery store, a restaurant, or a doctor's office, my mom still calls me her miracle baby. I hope all those complete strangers remember just how miraculous I am. As I dig into some of my past, let me be clear, I seek no sympathy here. I don't need any, oh, that poor West child. I simply just want you to know where I'm coming from as I elaborate in my self-therapy session of letdowns and fails.
It's time for another
Considering our deep and personal relationship with each other, it's not necessary to provide me with any personal background. This is not for you, it's for them. For them? Yes. Do I have a multiple personality disorder I am unaware of? Well, we're having a counseling session with ourselves. That can't be a good sign, can it? I hear what you're saying. And you choose to ignore it? Precisely. Yeah, we're in trouble. The first letdown of my life was really my parents' fault. They named me Walter. I know there's plenty of non-nerdy and maybe even cool guys named Walter, but all I see is the air-purifying, stuffy-nosed, boring nerd guy named Walter, played by Bill Pullman in Sleepless in Seattle. We all know what happened to him. Who wants Walter when you could have Sam Baldwin or Tom Hanks? Solely the fact that my first name is Walter isn't really that big of a deal, I guess. However, being named Walter and then having no one on earth ever call me that set me up in a complete cluster confusion from day one of my existence. They never even called me Walter. They named me Walter, but then they only ever called me Wes. When I go to the doctor or the airport and they use legal names, I'm that super annoying guy that they've called 15 times before they realize it was them. I deem that a pretty major fail on my parents' behalf. Way to go, guys. But they divorced when I was 4, and my mom moved 9 hours away to Utah. I had a somewhat troubled youth dealing with hardcore. If you just thought I was going to say porn, then you're wrong, but we learned something about you, didn't we? I was going to say poverty, abuse, my mother's illness, etc. My circumstances growing up didn't foster a good sense of self-confidence. I grew up hoping I could make something out of myself, but really thinking the reality was I wouldn't amount to much of anything too amazing. And I seriously doubted that any woman would ever love me. At least with that assumption about women, I can tell my poor inner little boy self to suck it. I have an amazing wife, and she's a dancer. Doesn't get much better than that, really. And I'm pretty sure she loves me, too. With the rest of my life, though, well, I took on this title of almoster. I hereby dub thee myself Lord Duke of Anti-Success. I think the little insecure boy is still there inside of me saying, you might as well stop trying. You are an unconnected, poor, overweight, silly-faced fool. Just go get some boring job that you'll be miserable with and provide for your family, because they are the only good things you have going on. Then the little older and a bit more confident me punches that little boy in the face and leaves him in the bat cave. Most of the time. I hung out in that cave and bought a few pizzas with that downer of a little boy for a few days after John Cleese backed out of my project, and when Bill Murray basically told me to bugger off, and when pretty much every other creative project that I touched seemed to fail miserably. Well, this is definitely how my past self felt. What a flippin' crybaby I was. But more on that stuff later. Growing up, it seemed like I rarely met another kid like me. All the other kids seemed to live in really nice houses. Several even had insanely nice cabins in Sundance or Park City. The tiny apartment my mom and I lived in would fit inside of the bathrooms of those places. I was never terribly bitter about the situation, though. I just figured this was life, and my station in life was to be poor and not extremely useful. It wasn't until high school, when a kid pounded on our apartment door in the middle of a winter night without any shoes on, that I really started understanding that there's always someone in a much worse situation than you. We were acquaintances from school, but I had no idea how rough his life really was. His mom had got home that night plastered out of her mind and started beating him up. And he didn't want to fight back, and he didn't know what to do because he could have taken her. He was a big dude. So he ran over to my apartment a few blocks away, and I remember my mom hugging him and seeing him cry like a little baby. And I knew then in that moment that having a loving mother was way more important than all the fancy houses and cabins in the world. And my mom was awesome. So much of life can be spent trying to figure out who in the love we are and what we're good at and what we'd be happy doing for the rest of our lives. I have countless examples of friends still trying to figure life out. Many of them struggle with their creative desires mixed with the need to be practical and actually make money just like myself. My longtime childhood friend, Cam Kendall, is one of the most talented artists and illustrators I know of. He had the courage to quit his day job and start his own thing from his house, doing freelance work and his own projects. He's crazy, extremely talented, but it's been a long, hard road at times to provide for his 4 kids and his wife. Countless times I've seen situations like Cam's, which leads me to say pure talent does not equate success. This dude has pure talent. But personally, I think it's a joke when people say that people like Cam must not be working hard enough when they struggle financially. Working hard and long in the creative world does not equate success. Success can be an extremely subjective term, I realize. So for now, to avoid a big philosophical discussion about success, let's just define it as being able to live off of a passion or a talent. I remember thinking before Cam became successful that his art was far better than many other successful illustrators, but my opinion didn't buy his kids food. So living in Utah is a very interesting place to be as a creative almoster. I try very hard not to be jealous of other people's success, but let's face it, I have at one point or another secretly hated Neon Trees, Imagine Dragons, Stephanie Myers, and countless other crazy successful creative people that have some roots in this very area. The lady drummer from Neon Trees lives just down the street from me. I actually played some shows with them back in the day. Imagine Dragons won the Battle of the Bands at Brigham Young University before they struck it big and spread radioactivity all around the world. The school is 10 minutes away from my house. Stephanie Myers graduated from the same school before she started writing about sparkly vampire chests and imprinting on people. The guys who made that real-life Fruit Ninja music video, which has over 30 million views on YouTube right now, they live across the street from me. And tons of other YouTubers. And then there's the crazy successful fantasy writer Brandon Sanderson, who actually happens to be an acquaintance of mine. I bumped into him a while back at Outback Steakhouse before I lost my job and I could go to Outback Steakhouse. And it was like, hey, man. And he was like, hey, man. And that was about it. But he knows me. Then Usher's manager and the couple who made Napoleon Dynamite are right here close as well. I could keep going and fill up this entire episode for hours with crazy and really successful creative people around me. And maybe it's like this everywhere, but it doesn't seem like it. I don't think so. You'd expect this in like New York or Hollywood due to the numbers of people doing creative things in those locations, but Utah? What are those Mormons putting in the water? They must have jacked up the batch going to my house because no creative success here. That's what I tell myself. Naturally, I'd ask, why aren't any of my scum-sucking ideas taking off? Could it be that I'm genetically stupid and unable to produce creative quality work that others appreciate? I had a terrible haircut once that made me look exactly like Katie Lang. It tripped me out, man.
It's time for another.
Comparing yourself to others is simply not a healthy practice. Could you try and focus on the positive aspects of your life? You know, I've never thought of that. Thanks so much. I can't believe people make a living doing this. You studied psychology as well. Prick! It's a common pop psychology subject to stop comparing ourselves to others, yet many of us still have that problem. Worse and more prevalent are the straight-up lies and ill-constructed inquisitions that we put on ourselves. Have you ever asked yourself those same kinds of horrible questions? It's like basically asking, why do I suck? It's taken a while to shake, but those negatively charged questions only bring back negativity to me in return. And they've got to go, which is exactly why I'm here now on this I Will Thrive journey. I have got to change my thinking patterns, and they've got to change drastically. I can't allow myself to ask those kind of questions anymore. So let's personal power pact, again, PPP, to stop lying to ourselves about ourselves. Have a good old-fashioned PPP. So all I'm saying these days is I will thrive. I will no longer allow the lies and crappy questions. And I know there's no limitations to what I can achieve. I have no idea what I'll have to confront to get there, but I'm positive I'll get there. One really great side effect to this new mindset is it actually allows me to find joy in the success of other creative people around me, like my buddy Cam. One really important lesson that I learned from him is consistency and resiliency. He always found a way to keep moving. He knew what he wanted to do, and he felt like it was what he was supposed to do. His art got better and better, and as he consistently put it out on social media, people noticed. And because of that, he's grown a pretty killer following. He also typically has a huge backlog of work months and months into the future. And he's about to come out with a book with a New York Times bestseller. It's pretty inspiring, man. Thanks. High five. High five. High five. It's time for me to learn and act from your example. So, what did the Mormons put in the water? Nothing. Well, except for people. You know, that whole baptism thing. Thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing. I will thrive.